Her name was Miss Thelma Rose. She lived alone in a small wooden cabin tucked at the edge of Granger Forest. Some called her strange, others called her a witch. Most just called her the Tree Lady. She was in her 70s, wore layers of old clothes and a wide straw hat with a feather tucked in, carried a walking stick made of driftwood, and tied wildflowers to her front porch every spring. But the most curious thing? She talked to trees. Not just in passing. She'd pause beside one, place her hand on the bark, and whisper as if it was an old friend. Every morning, she'd walk the trail with a small journal. She'd stop at the same trees each day and write things down. "You still standing strong, old boy?" she'd say, patting a pine. "That creek's pulling back. I can feel it." Kids giggled. Teenagers rolled their eyes. Adults shook their heads and whispered, "Bless her heart. She's lost it." But what they didn't know, what none of them saw, was that Thelma wasn't just talking to trees, she was listening. One late summer evening, the air changed. The wind blew dry and hot. The forest didn't hum the way it used to. The birds quieted, the leaves stopped rustling. Everything felt still. Thelma stood on her porch, notebook in hand. She didn't hear words exactly. She felt them, deep in her chest, like a drumbeat gone wrong. "Too dry, too fast," she muttered. "Something's coming. Fire, big fire." She walked to town the next morning and told the fire department, "You need to send a crew up near Bearjaw Ridge. The earth's dry, too dry. Something's gonna spark." The chief smiled politely, nodding slow. "Thanks, Miss Thelma. We'll keep an eye out." But as soon as she left, the others chuckled. Trees told her, huh? Maybe next time, the squirrels will give her a weather report. She heard them. She didn't say a word, just went home and waited. Because when you truly listen to nature, you also learn patience. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. 3 days later, just before dawn, a flash of lightning split the sky. No rain followed, only thunder and smoke. By noon, a ribbon of flame had crept up the edge of Bearjaw Ridge. At first, no one noticed, but animals started moving, fast and low. A deer ran through Main Street. A hawk flew low, circling, screaming. Then someone saw it, a thin line of smoke, trailing from the hills. And by the time the firefighters arrived, it was already too late to stop it from spreading. The fire moved fast, dry leaves, hot wind, pine needles snapping like firecrackers. The town buzzed with sirens and worried voices. Fire crews gathered, plans were made, maps were laid out on the hood of a truck. But no one knew the forest like Thelma. She sat on her porch, waiting, and then, they came. The fire chief, 2 young crew members, all sweaty, tired, and out of answers. "Miss Thelma," the chief said, looking sheepish. "You said something about the ridge. You were right, we could use your help." She didn't say, "I told you so." She just stood up, straightened her hat, and picked up her notebook. "Let's go," she said softly. "The trees already showed me the way." They drove up the old logging trail. Smoke curled through the air like snakes. The wind snapped dry branches overhead. Thelma pointed left. "That's the old riverbed," she said. "Dry now, but wide. Fire won't cross there easy." She pointed right. "That pine grove. Too dense. If it catches, it'll leap to town in 2 hours. You need to start a break before it gets that far." The firefighters looked at each other. "How do you know all this?" Thelma tapped her notebook. "I've walked these woods every day for 30 years. I know how they breathe." She led them to a narrow path, hidden behind a thicket. "Here," she said. "Use this. It curves away from the wind. Cut the fire off at the bend." They followed her lead, and hours later, when the flames reached the curve, they stopped. Or at least slowed, just long enough for the crew to push back. No one laughed anymore. They looked at her like she was something ancient, something steady, something the forest had chosen to speak through, and maybe it had. All night, Thelma stayed with the firefighters. She didn't run, she didn't panic. She stood beside the map, tracing her fingers along trails that weren't on paper, only in her memory. "This part here," she said, tapping near the southern hill, "has a sinkhole. If the fire hits that, it'll circle. You'll lose your trucks. The young crew listened, eyes wide. They followed her guidance, dug fire lines, where she said, watered soil in hidden dips, cleared fallen branches she'd marked in her notebook. And when the sun rose, orange behind a haze of smoke, the fire was still burning, but the town was still standing. The chief pulled her aside. Miss Thelma, how did you know all this? Did someone teach you? She smiled gently, her voice soft. The forest taught me, when you listen long enough, it speaks. You just have to believe its voice matters. When the fire was finally out, after days of ash and fear, the town gathered in the school gym. Families hugged firefighters. Kids held signs. The mayor stepped up to the microphone. We want to honor the people who helped protect our homes, our land, and our lives. He read names, then paused. And one very special woman, who walked these woods every day, not to be seen, but to understand them. He turned toward Thelma. You were our warning, our guide, and the one voice we needed to hear most. The crowd stood, some cried, some clapped, some bowed their heads. He dirt be the threat. No one called her strange, that day. She wasn't the tree lady anymore. She was Thelma Rose, guardian of the forest, and back in her cabin, by the firelight, she added one last note to her old worn notebook. The trees still whisper, but now, the people listen too. The fire made the news, big headlines, flashing cameras, news vans parked on the edge of town. Reporters with perfect hair and polished shoes tried to find her. But Thelma Rose didn't answer their knocks. She wasn't interested in being on TV, didn't want to be a hero in a headline. She just went back to her trees, back to the rhythm of roots, back to the hush of leaves, moving like whispers overhead, back to the soil that always made more sense than people. But the town had changed. People still walked the trails, but now they looked around more, listened more, slowed their steps. Children who used to laugh behind her back now called out softly when they saw her. Hi, Miss Thelma. Did you see the bluebird nest by the creek? Can you show me where the deer sleep? She answered each with kindness, not loud, not fancy, just honest. And sometimes hikers, folks with maps and phones and big water bottles, would pause as she passed. Which way's safest today, ma'am? What do you make of this breeze? She'd smile gently. Listen to the trees. If they're still, be still. If they lean, follow their lead. One morning, as she stepped into the woods, a soft voice followed her. Miss Thelma. She turned to see a young girl, maybe 10, holding a tiny notebook. Pages fluttered in the wind, like butterfly wings. I want to learn, the girl said. Thelma looked at her, for a long moment, not judging, just seeing. Then she handed the girl a tiny pine cone. Then hush your voice, she said, tapping the girl's heart. And open this. Together they walked the trail, in silence. 2 notebooks, one old, one new, listening. The years rolled on like water over stone. Thelma grew older, slower, but the forest never turned its back on her. She sat longer on tree stumps, now, listened more than she spoke. Sometimes she'd close her eyes and smile at the wind, like it was telling a secret. Only she understood. And then, one spring morning, soft sun, blooming dogwoods, bird calls just waking. Thelma passed, quietly, in her sleep, in the same cabin she'd built with her own hands, the same place where roots ran deep, and windows framed the woods, like paintings. The forest felt it. The birds were quiet that morning. No songs, just stillness. The leaves didn't rustle the same. Even the wind moved slower, as if the earth itself bowed in mourning. The town held no church service. Thelma wouldn't have wanted that. Instead they gathered under the trees, right near Bearjaw Ridge, where the fire had once burned, and where Thelma had helped it stop. The firefighters came, standing tall, in full gear. A little girl, the same one with the notebook, was now a teenager. She carried wild flowers, and a piece of bark, with Thelma's initials, carved into it. Children placed pine cones around a circle of stones. A breeze passed through, gentle and low, like a whisper. No speeches, just one quiet act. They placed a wooden sign, carved by hand, in the ground where her walking stick used to rest. It read, Thelma Rose, listener of leaves, keeper of roots. She spoke to the forest, But more importantly, she heard it speak back. They called her strange, but when the fire came, they followed her voice, because the woman who spoke to trees was the only one who understood their warning, and in the end, it was her whispers that saved the world from burning. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more inspiring stories.